Hello, testing 1, 2. Hey, I think we're recording. Right, so today we're going to create a flower press. We need to go up here to create, make a new document. I want you to name it, if you're at the school, at least you want to name it like your name. I will call it, probably workshop guy, dash flower press. And that's just because if lots of kids are making the same file, we want to keep them straight. Right, so now we have a blank workspace. If you haven't done Onshape before, 2 fingers lets you pivot around, and holding down Control with 2 fingers moves side to side and up and down, or you can also click on here to look between the front and the top and the sides, whatever. So this is like a little 3-dimensional space that we're going to be building our flower press in. For the most part, it's going to be flat, so we're just going to draw something on the top layer. So click on top, and now click on Sketch. This is everything in Onshape. You create a sketch and then you extrude it out to 3 dimensions. So sketch 1, the first thing it's asking you is select a sketch plane. That means where in space is it going to be? Well, we want to click somewhere on our top plane or over here on top. And it's going to go, aha! And now up at the top, there's a little tiny screen going on here, but it'll have a set of your tools up across the top. And we're going to click on top here. For now, I'm just going to turn off this top, front, right, and origin. Well, I'll leave the origin to clean things up a bit. So the first thing we're going to do is draw a little square that's going to be the size of our flower press. So I'm going to use the tool called Center Point Rectangle. The first point, I want to click right in the middle here because it's going to be the center. And by building it right in the center of my universe, it's easy to do things like mirror. So I'm going to draw a square out. Doesn't really matter what size you draw. You click it, and all of a sudden, at least on the laptop version of Onshape, this box shows you the size of your box. Now, your instinct is going to be to click on this to type it in. You can't do that. If you click on it, you make a new square. So without clicking on anything, just start typing in. We're going to make our flower press 100, and then you hit return. Now, don't click on that. You want to click on it so bad, but don't. You just want to type in another 100. Now we have a perfect 100 millimeter by 100 millimeter square for our flower press. But, a flower press kind of needs some roundy corners. So I'm going to go to this tool called the Sketch Fillet tool, and I'm going to click on my 4 corners, and it is going to try and roundy round my corners. I want them to be a little bit more than a 5 millimeters. I want them to be roughly, I can just double click on that, 15 millimeters, and that'll be nice and round. Excellent. Now, you can hit escape to stop using a tool, or you can turn it off here. I hit escape all the time. Now we're going to make 4 holes at 45-degree angles to be able to hold the tension of the 2 plates of the flower press. So what we're going to do is come up here to a aligned rectangle, and we're going to draw 2 dots somewhere around like this. Doesn't really matter for now. And then it's going to stretch it out. As long as you don't click on something and make it snap to an orange thing, you're fine. If you click on something and it snaps, then it's logically locked to that point, and you have to do a lot of work to unlock it. Reduced in-ring performance. Excellent. Okay, so this is highlighted. I'm not clicking on it because that would create a new box, but I want to change this to about 6 millimeters because that's the thickness of the material we're going to use. And now this one, I'm going to make it, I don't know, around 16 millimeters. Because doesn't really matter what I do there. The length is arbitrary. You'll see in a little bit why. But now this isn't exactly 45 degrees, and it's not exactly in the middle. And so what I'm going to do first is turn my front plane back on. I'm going to choose this tool up here. This is called the Dimension tool. So if I click on this line here, the first thing it wants to do is assumes I want to change the width of this. But instead, if I also click on this, it changes to an angle. Now it's pretty close, 46.59. If I change that to 45 degrees, then now my little square is exactly 45 degrees from into the corner of this shape, but it's still not centered. So I'm going to use my line tool, which is this one, and I'm also going to turn on, it's way down here, construction. If you had a wider laptop, you would see more of this. But I'm going to scroll down to click on construction. Now you'll notice that this construction is highlighted. As long as I draw something now, it's going to draw lines that are kind of dotted. That means these are just guides that I can use for aligning things. And they're not actually going to extrude or affect anything. So I'm going to undo that with Command Z. And I'm going to draw construction lines from this corner to somewhere. Oh, I have no longer selected my tool. So I'm going to click my line tool and scroll down to construction lines. Now I'm going to click on this corner here, see how it snaps, and then somewhere along this line. Doesn't really matter where for now, except I like it when it snaps right along this angle, so I'll do that. And hit escape. Another one, another construction line, this corner, snapping it over to this side. So now I have these two lines here. That one, I might have messed that one up. Let me hit that and delete it. And I'm going to turn back on my line tool, turn back on construction, click on this. I want it to snap. Yeah, see that orange line? I want it to follow that exact same angle. So you can see how that's not snapping, that one is. It's also perpendicular to that one. So I'm hitting escape. That means these two lines, ideally what I want is for these to be exactly the same length. That means this is directly in the middle. Well, I can use some other constraint tools. So what I'm going to use is called equal. So if I click on this one, and then I click on this one while my equal tool is active, and you notice that now this line and this line are equal. You can verify that by, if you were to pull a dimension off that, 13.78475, and that one is 13.784, yeah, so I don't really care exactly how long it is. These just need to be the same. Now, because I haven't defined exactly how long it is, I can still move this around. He says he's lying. Yeah, I can still move this around. It will stay centered, and it will, the two ends of it will stay the same length away. I want to get it into the corner a little bit. Yeah, so there, doesn't need a lot of meat in the corner. I'll do something like that. Right, oh, and this one, so this line here, I turned off the construction line. I'll turn that back on by going click, and now it's a construction line. At this point, I could delete these two lines. They no longer serve a function. If you want to delete a line, you can either click on it and hit delete, or you can use what's called the trim tool. He says confidently as he looks for it in this tiny thing, trim tool, and then you click on that and it disappears. So now I've got one corner done, and it's all perfectly where I want it. I could try reproducing the exact same thing and changing the dimensions, but what I'm going to do is called mirroring. I'm going to turn on my right plane. No, is that the wrong one? No, there it is. So now I have a little line right perfectly in the middle and perfect on this side. So if I choose my mirror tool, the first thing it asks me is to select a mirror line. I'm going to choose this little line in the middle. It says select the entities to be mirrored. Well, that's going to be this line, and it's going to be, I don't want the dots necessarily, this line, and this line, and this line. Now you see how that's exactly the same distances from this side to that. Hit escape, and I'm no longer editing it. I want these two down here. Well, can you figure it out? Yes, there's a mirror line here, and I'm going to select these four, I missed these 4 points, and these 4 points as well. I missed it. I'm used to working on a bigger screen, aren't I? Ah, there we go. And there. So now I have these 4 holes in the corners. Hit escape, so I'm no longer editing it. Now, essentially what we'd be doing is extruding this into a shape that we can use to press flowers on. We're not necessarily going to have to do that at this point, but we can. Yeah, why not? Let's do it. All right. So I use my extrude tool, and I'm going to make it 6 millimeters thick because that's the thickness of the material we're going to be working with. And clickety pokety. So now I've got this 3-dimensional shape. I'm turning off my right and my front, and probably my origin too. So what I need to do is create like a little, what was I calling it? A tab or a stub or something that slides through here that you can use to put pressure onto another one of these plates. There will be a second one. I don't necessarily need to model that because it'll be exactly the same thing. But what it's going to look like is, use my transform tool as I look for transform. It's going to be this, and the line I'm going to transform it by is this line here. I'll go the other direction, and I'll make a copy of it. So this is essentially what the flower press is going to be. 2 of these apart from each other, and then I'll do a transform on this one just to show you what's up. I'm going to do a transform by XYZ, which means I can just arbitrarily choose how far it is just to slide it up and show you that this is the pressing motion. That's us pressing the flowers. But I don't need to do that. And in fact, I don't even need to do this. The transform, I'm going to click on that and say, go away for now. I don't need you. So I need to create the thing that sticks through here that you can use to press down on the flowers and keeps it all locked into place. So I'm going to create a sketch, and I'm going to create that sketch by clicking on this little face right in here, like right on there. Now you can see once I do that, it asked me to select a sketch plane, so I didn't actually do that. Once I do that, then it creates a sketch right there in three-dimensional space onto that face. So it means I can draw something, and logically it's just there within the model. So if I look on this, so this one won't work to click on back or right because it's at a funny angle, but what I can do is two-finger click and go view normal to sketch plane, and all that does is zoom it out, so I'm looking at this from the face perspective. So I'll go back to view normal by sketch plane. Now I want to draw the shape that's going to come up. Let's see, what are my dimensions? I will start by drawing a center point rectangle. I don't necessarily want to lock it to a specific up and down position. I just want it to snap to the center line. So this, if you look at it, this is actually locking to the middle of one of these two lines, which is good because I want it right in the center. So I'm going to snap it, bring it up here somewhere, draw a little box, and I'll snap it to maybe this bottom corner here. So now if you look at it from the normal side, this is exactly lined up with the bottom of my shape sticking up to the top. And now what I want to do is actually bring this out a little bit more. I'm going to bring it out exactly another 6 millimeters. So I'm going to do a corner rectangle from this point here, snapping onto this point and dragging it down. So all that means is I have a rectangle. I don't know how tall it is yet. I can see it, but I just know that it's lined up with this side and this side. So I'm just adding to the length of this rectangle, and I want to add to it by, I'm going to say 6 millimeters. Sure. So now I've got an extra 6 millimeters sticking out. Now I want to have a bit of meat. I want to have a little bit of a board on this side and on this side so that it doesn't push all the way through. So I'm going to draw another little rectangle, snapping from here to here to here, around 6 millimeters. And I don't really, that height I don't need to adjust because it's going to be locked into this height anyway. And I'm going to do one over here where it's just, you see I'm just rolling over this in order to get a lock to it, and then I can drag it out to the side, and the little orange line shows me that it's constrained to that. And so I can go 6 millimeters on that one, boom. Now I'm going to use my trim tool, and I'm going to get rid of these extra little lines here. So if I were to move this out of the way and turn off part 1, that's the first thing I built, you would now start to see this is the actual sketch I'm drawing. This is the shape of the thing that I want to stick through my flower press and hold it in place. So this bottom 6 mils is going to be sticking out the bottom, and then the next 6 mils are going to be just within this shape, so it doesn't particularly need to have a hole in it, but I need to make a hole at the top here where my wedge can fit through. So I'm going to make a center point rectangle, move on to this, but don't click on it. So now what I'm doing here is, by making that 6 millimeters wide, by putting it onto the center point rectangle, what that means is I can't move it to the left, I can't move it to the right, but it's locked to being directly in the center of the shape. So it's always going to have the exact same space on either side, which is what I want. I want this to be a little bit taller. I'm going to use a dimension tool onto this shape and say, let's make that 37 millimeters tall. Now I've done everything right. These down here should be locked, and it should just pop up. Yay, popped up. So that's what I wanted to happen. This is still directly in the middle, but I need to make it a little bit taller. I'm going to say 25 millimeters. I'm just kind of picking something at random, but if I click on this, go to 25, 25. So 25 is roughly 37 minus 6 minus 6. I don't want this, I don't want this, and I want a little bit of space at the top. In fact, I'm now going to use my dimension tool, click on the top here, click on this line, and say, I want this to be 6 millimeters away. Now it is 6 millimeters away, and I was pretty close with my guess because that is now looking like it snapped pretty close to the top of this shape. So if I turn off part 1 again, now you can see this is the shape that I'm making. If I extrude that shape, and I will turn part 1 on again so you can see what I'm doing. If I extrude it, now that's way too big, but if I make it 6 millimeters thick, it now will fit into that hole. Oh, okay, I messed up. I'm going to double click back on Extrude 2 and make it a new object. I don't want to add it to the other shape. I want this to be a separate object. So now you can see with this, I could transform it, XYZ, and I could say, aha, it's going to basically slide up into this shape and then stop right there. And I can put a wedge into this center section here, which is what I will do next. I'll stop that transform because I had it where I wanted it. Like a couple things I could do. I know the size of my wedge. I know I want it to be roughly 25 millimeters tall because I've already defined that height. And it needs to be a wedge. So I could make a rectangle and cut it in half at an angle here. In fact, what the heck, I'll do that. So I'm going to create a sketch onto this face here. You see how it's going to be right inside of there. So you can see I've created a sketch directly in line with that face here. So I can draw something that fits perfectly into that shape. And I plan on doing that. So I'm going to create a shape that is, I'm going to do a corner rectangle. Why not? There's different ways to do this. There's a lot of different ways to do stuff in Onshape. I'm going to click on this and then drag out to the side. So I know that this shape is exactly parallel with this line up here. And then I'm going to move down on the bottom and do the same thing out here. So I've created a shape. So I want something around 48 millimeters. I just happen to draw it around 48 millimeters, just because that's going to give me enough room that when it's shoved all the way through, it's not going to be touching in the middle. So if you're pressing something really thin, you're not going to collide in the center. So since that's still highlighted, I can just type 48 and boom. Now that's exactly 48 millimeters long. Now I want this to be a wedge. So I can draw a line from this corner to this corner and delete these two parts, extrude it, and I don't want to go that far. I want to go 6 millimeters and make it a new shape. And now I have all the parts I need. If I make 2 of these, 4 of these, and 4 of these, then I should be able to slide these together and then put the wedge through to press the 2 plates together. So that's what I'm going to do now. Now, if you're on one of the school laptops, so right now you could either share this with me and I can help you laser cut it, or you could go back and do an auto layout if you have this extension on your account. Normally the student one accounts do have it already installed. All that does is lays everything flat. Boom. And now these 3 shapes are ready to be cut out. Now I could do multiples here. It doesn't really matter. The laser software we use, it's easy enough just to make copies of those parts if they're going to be exactly the same. So I really don't need any more than this. So the easiest way to get this shape into something you can laser cut is create a new sketch on my top plane here. So I'll click on top. Move this out of the way. Oh, by the way, so if you close this by ticking it or by Xing it, then you're no longer in your sketch. And I get kids all the time, they're like, why can't I draw? Where are my drawing tools? Because they want this out of the way. Somehow it's an instinct to go, okay, I don't want this anymore. I've created a sketch and where are my drawing tools? So you need to actually have this annoying window open if you want to be drawing a sketch. And I'm going to use one more tool that is pretty sharp, and it is called the Use tool. Where is it? He's looking for it. Use. Very clear. Now what that means is anything I click on, if it intersects with my new sketch, it will take those lines, those orange lines you see, and it will bring them into my new sketch. So like that line, and it's kind of like it's projecting those shapes. You know what? I'm going to undo this for now. And I'm going to see if I can't just use my Use tool and select a box around everything. And it worked. Okay, so now what I have, if I turn off all my parts, is I have a sketch that is exactly what I want to laser cut. Now, the reason I can get away with this being 6 millimeters and the material being 6 millimeters and it not necessarily being snug is because there's a little bit of what is called a kerf. The laser cuts out a little bit of extra space on either side, and also any two pieces of MDF are different. So I can cut two things that are exactly 6 millimeters, and usually there's just a nice little tightness, but they're not too hard to push in. If you happen to get a piece of MDF that is 5.5 millimeters thick, then this is going to be really sloppy. And if you happen to get a piece of MDF that's like 6.1, well, it's going to be super, super snug, if not impossible to get in there. If it's a little sloppy, it doesn't really matter because this shape will, the wedges are just going to be putting pressure on it. So it doesn't need any kind of side-to-side strength. It just needs to be able to force the second piece down onto the first piece with a wedge. So once you have that done, you can right-click or two-finger click onto Sketch 4. Two-finger click if you're on a Mac. And go to export as DXF. And it's going to give you some options. The last person using it might have used the dog. We want the DXF format. That is just a vector format for shapes. And we're going to name it something other than Part Studio 1 because I have like 500 files over on the other computer named Part Studio 1. So we're going to name this Grubby Workshop Guy - Awesome Sauce. Right. And this can stay DXF, this can be release 14, and this is download, meaning that when it's done, it's going to download to your computer that you're working on. Don't really want to export the splines as polylines. That means that anything that's roundy will just be a series of like straight lines. Set the Z height to normal and the normal to positive. That's fine. It doesn't really matter, but leave that one on. Export. It's waiting for CAD now. You'll see down here, I think you can see it, that it has downloaded the GWG Awesome Sauce. Now we can show that in the Finder. Stick in a memory stick, and it should show up as Garage something or other. And we can drag Goga Awesome Sauce over to Garage. What is this? Garage 2 or Garage 4? Wow. Okay. And a bunch of other files on here because we are a school. And you hit export. Now, this file is now onto my USB drive and ready to take over the laser cutter and cut. So, there's one other thing we can do. And that's to fancy this up and personalize it. So if you've enjoyed doing this and you want to play a little bit more with Onshape, let's make a little flower into the middle of all this. So I'm going to go back in time, drag this little bar here. This is my timeline. I'm going to go back before I created a sketch, my rollback bar, and I'm in the middle of a sketch. Sorry, cancel that. I'm going to drag this back before I made a sketch and before I did an auto layout. And I'll turn my parts back on. I'll turn part 1 back on. So I want to make a beautiful engraving to go onto this that I can laser cut. So I'm going to make a new sketch right onto this top face here. I'm going to use the Use tool just to get this outline shape so I know where to line it up. Now I can just freehand draw. I could draw my shape and it could be like, ooh, triangle, or I don't know, whatever. That's very exciting. Beautiful flower. That's me spelling flower. But I want to play around with doing something symmetrical like a flower. So I'm going to turn my origin point back on, and I'm going to draw a center point circle. Starting in the middle, coming out. That's like the middle of my little daisy thing. I'm going to use, let's just use the, I'll try the 3-point arc tool. Click here, click on the end, make it snap to the middle, and then kind of drag it out a little way. So that's kind of like my leaf. Probably should have done it from the side. Maybe that'll work. All right, now I'm going to mirror that with my handy dandy mirror tool. I'm going to turn on my right plane, so I have that little line right in the middle that I can use as a mirror line. Click on that. The entities to be mirrored is that line. Yay, thank you very much. Turn off the right plane. Now I'm going to go to my circular pattern tool, where I want this and this to be repeated. Now this number here tells me how many repeats there's going to be. You might like it like that. I'm thinking this needs 9, because that's the number you don't normally see in nature. Yay, now I have created my shape of a flower-ish thing that I want to etch onto my surface. If you want to keep some of the lines but not keep it the other ones, you can trim So I'm going to say, just click and drag a line around this middle and say, you all go away. And then I end up with that. And maybe I want to get rid of these lines too. Maybe I don't. This is up to you. Have a little fun, play around with the tools. Whatever you draw on this sketch, the laser cutter will etch. And we'll just set a different power setting for it so it won't cut all the way through. This is just going to be something interesting and decorative to go on top. There it is. There's my flower-ish thing. So now if I want to take this over and include it into my laser cut, I need to tick this sketch, two-finger click on it, which is the same as right-clicking if you have a mouse, export as DXF, and I'm going to call this Pity Fowler. Yeah. Etch. There you go. So I can engrave this on top of that piece as I cut it. Any questions? Be sure to email me or ask or come into the garage if you're nearby or whatever you need. And I hope that was helpful. Right, so now we take the file on our USB stick over to Lightburn. I apologize, this is on my phone and it's going to look Blair Witchy. But I have now my Awesome Sauce and my Petty Fowler etch files. I'm going to open down here. You need to make sure it's changed to all supported files because it's going to be saved as a DXF file, which is not the native to Lightburn. So I'm going to click on Awesome Sauce, load it up, and right here in the middle I now have my shape. I'm going to draw a box around this. So I'm going to change my power setting down here. We've got this one set to, those are the settings we use for 6mm MDF. I'm also going to group these together with the little group button. Now I'm going to go import. I'm going to import because I want to open this file at the same time. I'm going to choose my etch file, open it, and it's going to be, if I drag it out of the way, it's in the exact same sketch. Now I'm going to change this to 22, which is my line engrave setting. And now I'm going to group this together. Now what I can do is then if you select these two objects, you can use your target tool here and it will line the two up together. And so now my Petty Fowler is exactly in the middle of my shape. So I can select this. I want to make sure it etches before it cuts because once it cuts the thing can move around. So I'm going to take my line engrave, push up. You don't have to remember all this. I can help you cut this if you're here. If you're somewhere else, well, then I won't. Select all of that. Now you're ready to send it over to the laser cutter. And I had it off for noise, but so once this finishes booting up, now I can come over here and click on send. I was going to say, what do I name it? Oz. That's great. Now, if I click on file over here, yay, there is my file. I hit enter. Now, inside of here, I need to line up my laser. I'll try it here. I'm going to hit origin and frame it. And what I can tell from that is I have it set to be in the bottom left corner of my job origin. I can change that or I can just move it down here. Now I'm going to hit frame to see if it fits onto this shape. Yep, that fits. I need to focus it. So I don't know if you can see this, but that probably can't see anything, but focus it by using this little piece of acrylic that's 6mm thick. Set it down on, listen to this, set the tip down onto the acrylic, tighten it up, and now the head is exactly 6mm away from the piece we're going to cut. That's because that's the focal point of the laser. And now if we frame it again, looks pretty good. So I'm going to close the lid, turn on my chiller unit, turn on my laser exhaust. Right. Now, look through a filthy window and watch this. So the fast one was for etching, and then it's going to come back and do a slower pass, which is the cut. This cinema excitement right here. Now, wait a couple seconds to let the gases escape. It's a video, so I'll do it now. Put this out of the way. I should be able to pick that up, and leave the little interior parts behind. Now I have the top of my flower press. Right, so I've cut out 4 wedges, and I've cut out 4 of these things. I'm doing it weird because I only have one hand. Well, I mean, I have 2 hands, but only one free at the moment. So I can slide these down onto there. Take this other one that we made, which is just a duplicate of the first sketch, and get it right onto the top there. Here's a beautiful flower we're going to press. So stick that in, press this down. Now, in order to add pressure to it, we'll take these wedges, slide them in here. Right, so now if you put some downward force on this and press these in, it will squish down, hold your flower while it's being pressed. And pretty soon, for whatever reason you wanted one, you will now have a flat flower. Thank you for watching this video. I hope it helps you make a little flower press. Awesome!